The hospice room was eerily quiet except for the steady beep of monitors and my father's labored breathing. I stood outside, hidden from view, my heart breaking as I listened to my brother Daniel weave his web of lies. "She doesn't even call Dad," he said, his voice thick with fake emotion. "While I'm here every day, taking care of you, Sarah's too busy with her own life to care about her dying father." My hands clenched into fists as I fought the urge to burst in and expose his lies. But I stayed put, letting my phone continue recording, just as I had been for the past 3 months. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and at 34, I was watching my brother systematically destroy my relationship with our father during his final days, or at least, that's what Daniel thought he was doing. What my brother didn't know was that Dad and I had been meeting in secret twice a week, early mornings before Daniel's daily visits, ever since Dad's terminal diagnosis. We'd been recording our conversations, documenting everything because we both knew exactly what Daniel was capable of. "It's just us now, Dad," Daniel continued, his voice drooping with false sincerity. "I've always been the one who stayed, who cared. Sarah left for college and never looked back. She doesn't deserve any part of what you've built." I closed my eyes, remembering the conversation Dad and I had 3 months ago when he first told me about his pancreatic cancer. He called me to his study, his face grave. "Sarah," he'd said, his voice already weaker than I remembered, "there's something you need to know about your brother." He proceeded to tell me how Daniel had been manipulating him, isolating him from friends and family, slowly taking control of his finances. Dad was a successful real estate developer, and his estate was worth millions. Daniel had already convinced him to sign over several properties, claiming it was to avoid estate taxes. "I've been a fool," Dad had admitted, his hands shaking as he showed me the documents. "I thought he was trying to help, but he's been systematically stealing everything, piece by piece." That's when we hatched our plan. On paper, it would appear that Daniel had succeeded in turning Dad against me. We let him think his manipulation was working. Meanwhile, Dad and I met in secret, carefully documenting everything. The sound of footsteps snapped me back to the present. I quickly ducked into an empty room as a nurse walked past. Through the partially open door, I could still hear Daniel's performance continuing. "I've lined up buyers for the lakehouse property," he was saying. "Once you sign these papers, I can handle everything. You don't need to worry about anything." The lakehouse, our family's summer home for 3 generations. The property alone was worth over $5 million. But its real value was in the memories it held. Mom's last summer before cancer took her, teaching me to swim in that crystal clear water. The countless weekends Dad spent teaching us to sail, to fish, to appreciate the quiet beauty of early mornings on the lake. Daniel wanted to sell it to developers who planned to tear it down and build luxury condos. The thought made me sick. "Are you sure about this, son?" Dad's voice was weak but clear. "The lake house has been in our family for generations. It's for the best, Dad," Daniel insisted. "The maintenance costs alone are draining your resources. Let me handle it. Trust me." I heard papers rustling and had to stop myself from rushing in. "Not yet." We had to let him think he'd won. My phone buzzed quietly, a text from Marcus, my father's longtime lawyer and friend. "Everything's set. Let him take the bait." I texted back a quick confirmation, then resumed recording. Daniel had moved on to discussing other properties, other assets he planned to manage for Dad. His voice was smooth, practiced, the consummate salesman. He'd always been good at that, convincing people to trust him, to believe his version of events. The irony was, Daniel actually believed his own lies now. He convinced himself that I had abandoned the family, that he was the devoted son protecting our father's interests. The truth? That I'd been working with Dad for years, helping manage his real estate empire while Daniel squandered his trust fund on failed get-rich-quick schemes, didn't fit his narrative. "Just a few signatures, Dad," Daniel was saying. "Then you can rest." I heard the scratch of a pen, followed by Daniel's satisfied sigh. "There, I'll take care of everything now. You just focus on getting better." Getting better. Another lie. We all knew Dad wasn't getting better. The cancer had spread too far, too fast. The doctors gave him weeks, maybe days. I waited until I heard Daniel gathering his things, his designer shoes clicking against the hospital floor as he left. Only then did I slip into Dad's room, closing the door quietly behind me. "Did you get it?" Dad asked, his voice stronger now that Daniel was gone. I nodded, stopping the recording on my phone. Every word. Marcus has the original documents ready? Dad smiled weakly. All filed last week. Everything Daniel thinks he's getting his hands on. It's all been transferred to the trust. He just signed papers that mean nothing. I took his hand, trying not to notice how thin and fragile it felt. You should rest, Dad. I'll be back tomorrow morning before he comes. Sarah, he caught my hand as I turned to leave. I'm sorry. I should have seen through him sooner. Should have protected you from his lies. I squeezed his hand gently. None of that matters now. We're going to make this right. As I left the hospice that evening, I saw Daniel in the parking lot, talking animatedly on his phone. Yeah, it's done, he was saying. The old man signed everything. Once he's gone, it'll all be mine. That stupid sister of mine won't see a penny. I walked past into my car, unnoticed. Let him gloat. Let him think he'd won. The trap was set, and Daniel had walked right into it, his own greed and arrogance blinding him to the truth. That night, I sat in my home office, reviewing the recordings from the past 3 months. Hours of Daniel's manipulation, his lies, his schemes to cut me out of my inheritance. But more importantly, hours of Dad and me documenting everything. His clear statements about his true wishes, his signature on the real documents, witnessed and notarized. Marcus had helped us set up an irrevocable trust that now held all of Dad's major assets. The papers Daniel was so proud of getting Dad to sign, worthless copies, carefully crafted to look legitimate. My phone rang. It was Marcus. Just talk to the bank, he said without preamble. Daniel tried to access your father's accounts today using those powers of attorney he thinks he has. They shut him down just like we planned. I smiled grimly. How long until he figures out something's wrong? Not long. Want me to be there when he does? I thought about it for a moment. No, let him dig his hole deeper. We've got everything we need. After hanging up, I walked to my window, staring out at the city lights. Part of me felt guilty about the deception, about letting Daniel think he was succeeding. But then I remembered all the lies he told, all the ways he tried to poison Dad against me, and the guilt evaporated. Tomorrow would bring another performance from Daniel, another day of recording his manipulation. But soon, very soon, he would learn exactly what happens when you underestimate your sister. The next morning, I arrived at the hospice earlier than usual. Dad was awake, looking more alert than he had in days. Daniel called last night, he said as I sat down beside him. He's already lined up buyers for 3 properties. He thinks he's got it all figured out. I took out my phone, starting a new recording. Tell me again, Dad, just for the record, what are your actual wishes for those properties? Dad's voice was clear and strong as he detailed exactly how his estate was to be handled. We'd done this many times over the past months, building an ironclad record of his true intentions. As he finished speaking, he reached for my hand. Sarah, promise me something. Anything, Dad. When this all comes out, when Daniel realizes what we've done, don't let him destroy himself completely. He's still your brother. I wanted to argue, to point out that Daniel had shown no such concern for me, but I just nodded. I promise, Dad. We'll make sure he has enough to start over. Just not the empire he thinks he's stealing. The sound of familiar footsteps in the hallway made me tense. Daniel was arriving earlier than usual. Go, Dad whispered. Let him think everything's going according to his plan. I slipped out through the private door just as Daniel entered through the main one. From my hiding spot, I could hear him launch into his daily performance of the devoted son. But today was different. Today, the trap was about to snap shut. The day Dad died, Daniel put on his greatest performance yet. I watched from a hospital corridor as he wept dramatically, clutching Dad's hand and promising to take care of everything. He even managed to squeeze out a few tears for the nurse's benefit. What he didn't know was that Dad had passed peacefully hours earlier, during our real final moments together. Those precious last hours were spent with me by his side, both of us secure in the knowledge that justice would soon be served. It's time, Marcus texted me 3 days after the funeral. Meeting set for 10 a.m. tomorrow at the office. I took a deep breath, reviewing our preparations one final time. Everything was in place. All the recordings were backed up, the real documents safely filed, the trust arrangements rock solid. Now we just had to watch Daniel's carefully constructed house of cards collapse. The next morning, I arrived at Marcus's law office early. The conference room had been prepared exactly as we discussed. Laptops set up to play the recordings, documents arranged in chronological order, even a security guard discreetly stationed outside the door. "Ready for this?" Marcus asked, adjusting his tie as we waited. I nodded, though my heart was racing. He needs to learn there are consequences for his actions. Daniel swept in at exactly 10 a.m., wearing an expensive new suit and a confident smile. "Let's make this quick," he said, barely acknowledging my presence. "I have property buyers waiting." Marcus cleared his throat. "Before we begin, I should mention that this meeting is being recorded for legal purposes. Do you consent?" Daniel waved his hand dismissively. "Whatever. Just read the will so I can get started managing my inheritance." "Very well." Marcus opened a folder. "We'll start with the lakehouse property. Already sold," Daniel interrupted smugly. "Well, pending final paperwork. The developers are ready to break ground next month." I watched his face carefully as Marcus continued. "According to these documents, you believe you have the authority to sell the lakehouse based on papers signed by your father on March 15th. Is that correct?" "Of course, I have everything signed and notarized. Dad gave me full control." Marcus nodded, pressing the button on his laptop. Suddenly, Dad's voice filled the room. "I want to state clearly for the record that any documents my son Daniel claims I signed on March 15th were obtained under false pretenses. He deliberately misrepresented their contents." The color drained from Daniel's face as the recording continued. He lunged forward, trying to shut the laptop. "What is this? You can't." "Sit down, Daniel," I said quietly. "There's more." For the next hour, we played selected recordings from our secret meetings. Dad's clear, coherent voice detailed every manipulation, every lie, every attempt Daniel had made to steal his inheritance. Between recordings, Marcus presented the real documents, the irrevocable trust, the actual will, the evidence of Daniel's attempted fraud. "This is impossible," Daniel sputtered, his confident facade crumbling. "You weren't there. You abandoned him." I pulled out my phone, pulling up photos of Dad and me together, time-stamped and geotagged. "I was there every morning before you arrived. Did you really think Dad wouldn't see through your lies?" "The properties you think you're selling?" Marcus continued. "They were transferred to the trust months ago. The papers you've been waving around are worthless." Daniel's face contorted with rage. "You set me up. You turned him against me." "No, Daniel. You did that yourself." I opened another folder, spreading out bank statements and property records. "Did you think we didn't know about the money you'd already stolen? The properties you mortgaged using forged documents?" He lunged at me then, but the security guard was faster. As they restrained him, I stayed calm, meeting his wild eyes. "We have enough evidence to send you to prison, Daniel, but that's not what Dad wanted." Marcus slid another document across the table. "This is your choice. Sign over the properties you illegally obtained, repay what you've stolen, and accept the trust fund Dad set up for you. A modest but comfortable monthly allowance. Or we take this to the authorities." "You can't do this to me," Daniel whispered, but his voice had lost its power. "I'm his son, and I'm his daughter," I replied. "The daughter you tried to erase. Did you really think you'd get away with it?" The next hour was a blur of paperwork and legal terms. Daniel signed everything put in front of him, his hands shaking, his earlier arrogance replaced by shocked defeat. The empire he thought he'd stolen was slipping through his fingers. "One more thing," I said as he stood to leave. "The lakehouse stays in the family. Dad's last wish was for it to become a retreat for children with cancer. It'll be renamed in Mom's honor." Daniel didn't respond. He walked out without looking back, shoulders slumped, leaving behind the wreckage of his schemes. Later that evening, I sat on the lakehouse's dock, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and pink. The renovation plans were already underway. The property would need modifications to accommodate sick children and their families, but the essential character of the place would remain unchanged. My phone buzzed. A text from Karen, Daniel's wife. He told me everything. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea." I didn't reply. Karen had stood by silently during all of Daniel's manipulation, enjoying the lifestyle his theft provided. Her apologies meant nothing now. Another message, this time from Marcus. "Trust paperwork is filed. Daniel's monthly allowance starts next week. Your father would be proud." That brought tears to my eyes. Dad had known exactly what he was doing, setting up the trust in those final months. The bulk of his estate would go to charitable causes, with the lake house serving as his lasting legacy. I had enough to live comfortably, to continue my own career without worry. And Daniel? He had what Dad thought he deserved. Enough to live on, but not enough to cause any more harm. Weeks turned into months. Daniel eventually moved to Arizona, unable to face his former social circle after his schemes were exposed. I heard through family friends that he found a job in real estate, legitimate this time, working for someone else's firm. The lake house transformation was completed in record time. The first families arrived in the summer, their sick children finding joy in the same waters where I had learned to swim. Watching them from my office window in the converted boathouse, I knew Dad had been right. This was better than any revenge. A year after Dad's death, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Daniel, handwritten on plain paper, not his usual expensive stationery. "Sarah, I've been trying to write this for months. The words don't come easily, but they need to be said. I'm sorry, not just for what I tried to steal, but for who I became, for what I tried to do to you. Dad would have been proud of what you've done with the lake house. I drive by sometimes when I'm in town, see the kids playing on the beach. It's better than any development could have been. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, and I'm not asking for it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what Dad saw in you. Why I was too blind to see myself. Daniel." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. Maybe someday I'd respond, but not yet. Time would tell if Daniel's remorse was genuine or just another performance. For now, I had work to do. The lake house was hosting a fundraiser for childhood cancer research, and there were 1,000 details to manage. Dad's legacy lived on, not in property deeds or bank accounts, but in the laughter of children finding joy despite their illness, in the tears of grateful parents watching their kids just be kids for a while. As I walked down to the dock that evening, just as I had so many times with Dad, I felt that peace. The brother who had tried to steal everything had instead given me something priceless. The chance to honor our father's true wishes, to create something meaningful from what could have been just another inheritance battle. The sun set over the lake, painting the sky in brilliant colors. Somewhere in Arizona, Daniel was living with the consequences of his choices. But here, in this place that had sparked so much greed and conflict, something beautiful had grown from the ashes of his schemes. Dad would have liked that ending best of all.